There's an old saying, to boil a frog, raise the temperature slowly. The idea is that small adjustments are often easier to accept than larger ones. The audience surrounding this project has watched the game evolve in real time. Artwork has changed, card text has changed, mechanics have changed, even parts of its structure have been revised. I think in this metaphor, we are the frog. But what did we buy? For some, it's the hope of a successful competitive card game. For others, it's our favorite character or faction. What makes the promise so powerful is that it doesn't exist yet. It lives somewhere in the future. The game is being judged not only for what it is, but for what people hope it could become. Different groups have purchased different promises, and those promises do not necessarily point in the same direction. A change that appeals to one group may disappoint another. As we move closer to release, the game will begin to define itself more clearly. What Weirdco prioritizes will reveal a great deal about what this game wants to become. Long before release, a sense of ownership had already developed within the community. People are often far more loyal to things they feel ownership over. The audience did not simply purchase a finished product. They purchased a promise, and they were invited to watch that promise take shape. With each dev update, we have seen the project come into focus. Community feedback is actively solicited. Surveys are distributed. Discussions happen publicly. They even created a Weirdco membership for the backers. Changes are visible. Whether those changes are actually driven by community feedback is almost beside the point. The act of asking for feedback itself creates investment. Players begin to feel as though they are helping build the game. We are not merely consumers observing a product from the outside. We become contributors, observers, advocates, sometimes even critics. Perhaps this also helps explain some of the goodwill surrounding the project. The audience has watched the project evolve. Over time, player expectations begin to move alongside development. We are not simply observing the revisions, which raises an interesting question. Who owns Cyberpunk? The designers who created it? The community helping to shape it? The backers who believed in it before it existed? Or does ownership now exist somewhere between all three? I think one of the largest sources of friction comes from translation. Not language translation, conceptual translation. Every time an experienced card game player learns a new game, they instinctively begin searching for familiar anchors. The mana system, the graveyard, phases, any similarities to help them reduce the new concepts. This might be the most common phrase spoken by a TCG veteran learning a new game. Players are searching for parallels. They are trying to connect unfamiliar ideas to familiar ones, and that's completely natural. Humans rarely learn something in isolation. We understand new ideas by relating them to things we already know. A folder on a computer is a good example. There is no actual folder inside a computer, yet the metaphor instantly communicates purpose, function, and behavior. New ideas are often wrapped in familiar language because familiarity makes them easier to understand. The challenge is that many of its systems do not map neatly onto traditional TCG conventions. The dice system, legends, the fixed game length, even some of the wording conventions. These systems ask players to abandon assumptions they bring from other games. And that's where much of the friction comes from. Not because it's necessarily more complicated, but because it's asking players to think differently. Many of the revisions have been received positively, and part of the reason is that many of them feel more like clarifications. These are all changes aimed at reducing the distance between what the designers intend and what the audience understands. This is where community feedback becomes valuable. Not because the community can tell Weirdco how to fix anything, but because the community can identify points of friction, points where communication breaks down and something is required to smooth it out again. A player saying, "This card feels bad," is not actually asking for a different mechanic. They are simply revealing that the intended mechanic is not being communicated clearly. And I suspect that is part of Weirdco's challenge. Their job is not only to build the game they want to build, it is to find a space between their design goals and the familiarity required for players, both veteran TCG players and new players, to understand those goals. Put simply, reading the card explains the card. One thing that may be difficult for us to see is that Weirdco is not only building a game, it is also building an audience. Most of the people involved today are deeply invested in the project. We sought it out early. We backed it before release. We spend time discussing mechanics, artwork, card text, and future possibilities. We are early adopters. But early adopters are rarely representative of the audience that eventually forms around a product. The people who discover it at launch may never read a developer update. They may never participate in a survey. They may never know half of these discussions ever happened. They will simply encounter the game that emerges from them. Many of the discussions today are ultimately being made for people who are not here yet. As all of these changes are happening, it's important to keep in mind the perspective of other groups. A player who discovers the game at launch may never know any of this happened. To them, there is only one version. Meanwhile, Kickstarter backers experience something else entirely. They witness the changes happen one at a time. The game evolved gradually, and each revision was discussed, debated, and absorbed before the next one arrived. And the designers occupy yet another perspective. Many of the changes visible to the public were likely discussed, tested, and iterated internally long before the community ever saw them. Their timeline is unlike anyone else's. In a strange way, Cyberpunk TCG exists in multiple timelines simultaneously, all looking at the same game while carrying completely different histories of how it arrived there. So we arrive at the final question. How much can this promise change without becoming a different product?